Sophie. We managed to get the Zoom working, and so it's really nice to see you and to be able to have this talk with you about the work we've done together, because we've done quite a bit, haven't we?
I think 3 pieces.
3 pieces, and hopefully there'll be more, right?
Yeah.
So, so I thought it would be really interesting to talk about how we've been working together, and the last work we did together was on the Both Universe project and performance. But I thought we should go back and really talk about how we started working together and kind of what we do together, because there's a sort of thread, isn't there, through all the work, do you think? So I just wanted to ask about the first time we worked together, and we worked together in a piece called Share of Water. It was a piece where I'd made a sort of sound voice piece with my father's voice and my voice. My father had been in my flat, and he hadn't been in my flat for years and years, and I got him to talk, and he started to talk about water shortages in Sindh in Pakistan, and that was sort of interwoven with my thoughts about my father, really, I suppose, and my relationship with my father. So what was that like for you? I came to you with that sound piece and I gave it to you, and what happened when I gave you that music? How did that strike you as a filmmaker, as an artist, as a visual artist?
Well, I've always really loved your work. I remember coming to see a piece of work, and was it called Red Velvet?
Slit Scarlet. Was it the piece on Jada?
Yes. Okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Well, I really remember coming to see Slit Scarlet. And
did you come to Cambridge?
Yes, I came up to Cambridge.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Actually, I took the photograph of everyone looking at the ceiling that you loved. So I did.
She made a moving fresco. She made a video projection on the ceiling, hadn't she? Yeah.
And I've seen you play often, and in fact, you've played at my mother's funeral, which is incredibly powerful. And I've got footage of us being together in the bathroom with you rehearsing.
Oh my gosh.
Of my mother's funeral. Yeah. So it's very, I have a very emotional response to your work and the way your presence in your work. And this film was interesting to me because it felt so layered, and it was about water. And I think that's quite interesting because all 3 of the things we've worked on, we've included water in the work.
Oh yes, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. And it's not been conscious, but it's all been about water a lot. And I think your father kept saying, I remember. So this idea of memory is a beautiful thing to start to represent. So there were these very potent symbols of place, water, memory, and then of course you discussing your father's voice. And although, to be honest, we never really sit down and go deeply into our pasts in that way, we talk about work, talk about work more. I do relate. I didn't grow up with my father, although I'm close to him and I knew him extremely well, but there was an absent aspect to my father. And
I mean, I did grow up with my father, but then there was a time when I didn't see my father for quite a long time after, but I'd already left home.
Yeah.
But he sort of went off traveling, living in other places, so I didn't see him.
Yes, and well, And there was something about you articulated, you kept saying in a repetition, my father's voice, my father's voice. And I think that's very evocative for anybody. Anybody can come to
I
that.
think I remember that in it, I say this is the first thing I ever heard when I was born, the first voice I ever heard.
Yeah.
Because that was always the story that my father had picked me up the moment I was born and spoken to me before my mother spoke to me.
Well, and these words that you mixed with sound and music become they're just really fantastic to work with. And then the second thing that you do, which is incredible, is because I've seen you work as an artist, and you're absolutely exacting and precise about how you present your work and how it's performed and bringing everything together. You're so rigorous, but at the same time, if you well, I don't know how it is to collaborate with you as a dancer, but to collaborate with you as a filmmaker, once you've said I want to do something with you, I go away and what I go, well, we did have meals, and I'd say, well, this is what I'm. Well, we'd had meetings, actually. They weren't meals. We'd had meetings.
We probably ate at the same time.
We had meetings, and I'd go, well, I'm doing this, this, and this, and this, and you'd always go, brilliant, 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 brilliant. So I've never had. I've just, as an artist, I felt very, very free and trusted, and I don't know if that's because I don't necessarily think that's because of who you are. I think you choose people consciously or unconsciously that are in very. It's always been incredibly easy to work together, and when you're giving me a project, I never struggle with what kind of imagery I'm going to use. I just wake up and each day it comes to me, and I know there's never like, oh, how am I going to please her too? What does she want? What does she need? We somehow have this we swim together.
I think for me, really the thing about collaboration is that what I've learned over the years is that if you choose the right collaborator, which is a question of liking their work, but also it's deeper than that. It's a sort of that you would be on a level unconsciously almost understand each other.
Yeah.
Then you should be pretty hands off once you hand them their part to do. You know, if you want something, anything, if you're manufacturing something, you give a portion of the thing to do to the person who's an expert in that area. And also it's really exciting to what I find exciting about working with you is that you'll come back with something completely unexpected sometimes.
Luminous threads, they bind a life together.
So when we did Music to Swim To, we did this piece Music to Swim To, which I'd made this piece and I was really very I was really fond of the work I'd made. I was pretty pleased with it, you know, and
it's an amazing.
And also because it was a story from my childhood, story about when I took a story something that happened to me when I was a child, that I won a swimming race in a nightdress holding a candle on my, a lit candle. So that, and that symbolized a lot of things to me, about this place, Sindh in Pakistan, about keeping this light burning in the wet. And I lived in Bristol that was generally raining. And I always thought of this place, Sindh in Pakistan, that was not the opposite. It wasn't raining, it was the opposite. So this was somehow woven in with this winning this swimming race. And it was quite hard for me to give it away to you, in a way, because I was quite possessive in a strange way of that story, and having come up with that sort of whole notion of expressing that story through a piece of music, and then working for literally probably 3 months on that piece of music, maybe more, because I kept doing it, and I was really quite obsessive the way I worked on that. And then I gave it to you, and you came back with something you'd taken it into another area. You went into the Temple of Diana, wasn't it?
Okay, so
you brought other stories to it, in a sense.
Well, that's and again, that's lovely of you to let me do that, because I saw, in my mind's eye, I saw this beautiful young girl from this different, with this mixed heritage.
I don't think I was so beautiful at that age. I think I was quite weird looking. My mother cut my hair till it was cropped really short. And I remember actually going into the swimming baths and them saying, "You're in the wrong changing room. You should be in the boys' changing room."
Well, exactly. I saw this adorable, amazing child with all these complexities suddenly getting ignited by this race with this, the way you told me the story. She held this candle, and it reminded you of maybe 1001 Nights or Tales of the Sindh, and I just saw you going, this is it, this is me, I'm going to carry this flame across the water. And I saw you seize that, and what it set off, the chain it set off in me, is how extraordinary adolescent girls are. And I was thinking a lot, because it was perfect for me, because I have a lot of family with a lot of children of different ages, and I spend a lot of time around them, and there are these brilliant young girls, and yet culturally often they're depicted as wearing pink and liking pop music or something, or that's how they're advertised to. And that's one aspect of it. And I'd heard, and I'm not going to be correct on this, but that in ancient Greece, girls were sent away to the woods, to learn archery and become young women. There's been cultures with initiations into womanhood that were a much, they do involve beauty and scent and senses, but they involve strength and power. And blowing me down, the second you gave me that piece of that story, I realized that my young niece, whose father's Iranian and mother's British, she's my cousin, but I just call them nieces. I'm very close to them all.
I didn't realize
was learning to swim. She's training to swim the Channel. And I couldn't believe she was very adolescent, very young, a tiny, slim thing, hasn't sort of even got body fat developing yet. It's all going into growing. And she was training to swim the Channel. And I was so amazed by how strong that was. And that reminded me of the Greeks. And then there's so much blessings and sort of synchronicity in work, but that introduced me to their training regime. They'd all train in the Serpentine, where there were swans, and that became more Grecian for me, that idea of the power of a young woman's dreams, really carrying a candle. And I'm trying to think, and then, to be honest, I mean, sometimes as an artist, it's such a you're such a little thief, but often there's a scene where she's in a costume that she's made out of newspaper. Well, I just came downstairs one morning and her sister were making dresses on themselves out of newspaper. I mean, I'm using...
Looks like almost like a sort of bird in that, doesn't she? She looks like a sort of strange little bird of prey or something. It's beautiful.
And it's an awkward age, and I think there's a piece I really love where she's trying to change modestly, and that those feelings around the body and adolescence. So for me, it also became a piece of work about that in between liminal space of becoming a woman. And I think it's so there in your music. The music goes from absolutely peaceful to that extraordinary kind of this sort of sound, this wall of sound sometimes that's so strong, like and it was actually quite a long piece of music. I noticed when I was
quite long. I don't know how long it is exactly.
It's 10 minutes, which is a very long piece of music to sort of find images that will that you know, that you don't start going, oh, this is a bit boring. But I think because of the music,
it's absolutely beautiful.
And I think swimming's very hypnotic, and plus they're on, you know, there's just and again, I wasn't allowed to go on the boat with the girls when they swam the channels, swam the channel, and so I was just dependent on the father's footage, so it was a bit rough. But that kind of rocking of the boat and these giant, I love the sort of phallic symbol, these young tiny girls swimming in this giant rough sea with these giant ships behind them, which I sort of saw as the sort of phallic this sort of phallic presence that they've got to kind of negotiate in life, that's gonna be complicated, that being desired and having desires, and it's all there for me. I don't think it's necessarily in the piece, but some of it is. Then of course I went on holiday with another girl who had a swimming pool with a window in it. And that's that lovely girl with her candle. So
that she actually did have a window in the pool. That's how you shot that.
So it's all love.
No, that's so amazing that we're now talking about, because we haven't properly talked about how you, I don't think we really have sat down and talked about it, and I never realised there was a window in the pool. But I was thinking, did she go down with the camera? That's what I imagined, that you actually went down diving with the camera.
It's all luck and blessing, and that's what I feel about working with you. You just go away, Soph, go and do it, and then everything gets given to me, because for me to film underwater would have been unaffordable. You know, we're making artist films with
at that time I didn't even have any money for that.
Exactly.
I hadn't applied for funding or anything, so we just winged it together, didn't we?
So to be given costumes, in a way, to be given subject, to be given actresses, to be given underwater filming techniques, you know, for free by the gods of the Greek gods, you know, it was just a real pleasure. And I ask
you, when you've made work with me, do you actually cut the film to the music, or is there a process of
totally
editing? Because I'm not sure whether you cut to the music. I mean, it always seems to work.
I have to cut to the music.
You do actually cut to the music.
I have to, and you can't go against. You could go against the music.
You can deliberately go against, as long as you know what you're.
I remember in Music to Swim To, there's this beautiful kind of really soulful string where it sort of goes down, and a kind of shuddering noise. And I had these swans taking off and flying, and you just, I knew as I go along, I know that the swans have to fly to that sound because they're perfect together. Or I knew with that very heavy, well, that your music's got a beginning, a middle and an end, and there's definitely a rising up and a crescendo and a change in that piece of music. So that actually worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think I very much, in a way, I made it as a standalone story. But then I always imagined that it would actually, I thought at first maybe it would be in a swimming pool, and I would actually recreate that actual race and play the music in the swimming pool, like on huge speakers in a pool, and have all these girls doing this thing.
That would be amazing too, you know.
That was my first, but then I gave it over to you and decided to do it this way instead. I don't know why. I think you maybe I mentioned it to you and you said, "Oh, I sent you the music or something. So what do you think?" So it was, it was. And do you think the fact that they're both mimic?
The very fast drums. Is it tabla?
There's tabla in there. Yeah, Talvin Singh gave me some tabla loops. He gave me some tabla loops, and he said you can use them for anything you like. So I stuffed it in there. Because I think also that was somehow there are this string parts that are very Western, very sort of almost impressionistic. That was another feature of my childhood, that my mother loved impressionist music, and my father obviously was from Pakistan, and he would play other music like Afghan music or music from the subcontinent. So that those two musical consciousness was always interwoven for me from very young. So that was sort of symbolic, I suppose. And that's why I did it. But for me, it's completely natural. It's not like I decide I'm going to make fusion music.
No.
It's just those are the things that naturally flow around my own being, you know, these things. Sometimes they make something great, and other times they really rub up against each other.
Well, I just felt they, in that instance.
There's something in your background that identifies with my dual heritage stroke schism. Do you think there's something?
In my case, my parents were just very bohemian and also very immature, and I definitely felt excluded by society because of that. And actually, maybe now on a film is the moment to say it, is that families don't want to be, you know, families that are leading sort of wholesome, healthy, organic lives don't want their children to go and play with the family where the mother's dangerous and drunk and not being responsible. So I definitely felt excluded from that kind of and being of a single mum. I definitely sometimes felt excluded from, or maybe I excluded myself in my head, but I definitely felt
that sense of otherness, or that sense you've had in your own way, for your own reasons, a sense of otherness, a sense of not being quite the same as, or not being the same as everybody else.
I don't fit in. We're not a nuclear family. People don't come round to my house. Kids don't come on play dates. The families don't invite and it's not probably they did. They probably were lovely. My mum probably didn't want to be around people like that. I don't know, but I definitely sort of fantasized about this kind of, this world where families all sit together having picnics, and there's this sort of world out there that's inclusive, and I'm not in it. I definitely experienced that. And I don't know if it was to do with class, alcoholism, gender, I don't know. I did have very strong feelings about being a girl as well. I really, really felt sometimes really cross that I couldn't be a boy, and it wasn't because I wanted to be a boy, it was just they had such an easier time of it as far as I was concerned. They had so much more opportunities and advantages, and it really pissed me off what I was offered as an education compared to my brother or things like that. So I didn't mean to talk about this on film. We've never talked about this in our conversations, but I definitely relate to feeling othered. But I haven't got anything particular to pin it on, to be fair.
So I wrote some questions and just points of conversation for us, really. So I'm just seeing. You worked on the Both Universe project. That was with footage that I brought originally. I mean, I gave you some footage that I brought back from Pakistan that I shot there with a young filmmaker, Taha Kareem there. How did that work? That was another kind of a thing, wasn't it? Because then you went and got that amazing footage. Was it from Aldeburgh?
Yeah.
Of the boats and the fishermen and stuff.
Yes,
and then, but that wasn't really cut to the music. It was more cut to the sensibility of the music, because we decided that it would be a sort of, there would just be bits of film that would be played through almost like with a VJ or something, wasn't it? It was a sort of random, the way it was going to be played in the performance. It wasn't in a specific order. It wasn't cut to a specific piece. So
I think what was amazing was scale in that instance, and that it was live, and that you had such an amazing young, I don't know, Amy Douglas Morris to mix it for you on the night. Yeah. So I think what I remember about that is just the scale of these small plants that were blowing in the wind, being giant, becoming giant, that kind of vulnerability.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think everybody loved that image of me standing in a sort of forest of giant bluebells. It was absolutely beautiful, really amazing.
And the energy.
And you did that whole thing of it. You brought the Englishness of my, you brought the Englishness into the.
I think that contrast was fantastic, of the footage of you that you shot in Pakistan, then suddenly British, Aldeburgh, there's a lot of musical history in Aldeburgh, but also that sort of seaside holiday, quintessentially English, very
in the performance as well, because the collaboration that I made with Amir Zaki was very central to that performance, and he unfortunately didn't get his visa through in time. Well, they didn't give him his visa in time, so he wasn't there, but his recordings were there. And one of the pieces, so in a sense, because Amir also was a musician whose music transcended categories. It wasn't, it seemed to me, he had roots in Pakistan. He was born in Saudi Arabia, so there was and he had a sensibility that transcended, could have been European at times, or American in his music. He was a very extraordinary musician. But to hear his guitar with the gulls in Aldeburgh flying around, it was wonderful, because it was so sort of liberating. In a sense, it liberated him in his music. It liberated his sound and took it. It was really fabulous. I loved that so much.
Yeah.
So
again,
yeah.
Just working with chance. It's walking around with you in my mind, with your work in my mind, and probably editing that footage and then coming across something and just thinking, because I remember there being a really strong contrast as well between beautiful flowers and weeds, but they were both beautiful, and I don't know, that just seemed like a potent juxtaposition. And then there was the energy, and we're back to the sea and birds, and we'd filmed you on the river as well, which was lovely. That was your idea.
Yeah. And that was chance as well, because I just happened to have tickets for something, and it was an exhibition, I think, at Now Gallery, and they'd included a free boat ride, wasn't that?
That's it. And that was.
We just got on the boat, and you filmed me there.
Yeah, but for you to be moving down a river,
Again on the water.
Again on the water and moving through London.
And such a symbolic river, and a river with such sort of history through the ages of, travel and people coming and going. And yeah. So what's next?
I know. Well, I mean, part of my real attraction to your work is, I mean, I would so. Wouldn't it be extraordinary if there was a day where we could go to Sindh and make a film together? I
You
mean,
should go to Sindh and try.
and
Yes,
work with the
you
Sufi,
should
with the
come to
Sufi.
Pakistan, and we should be work. Make a film there. That would be amazing, and it would be really also nice for me to make some film to work the other way around, so that you give me a piece of film and I make some music, because I've never done that.
That would be really
Then
interesting.
always this way, so it could be go the other way as well.
Have we never done it that way?
No.
Okay.
So it's been you did My Share of Water, that was first, then Music to Swim To, then the stuff for both universe. So it hasn't been that way. We haven't yet worked
The other way around.
that way around.
I just love working to what you've made. That
Thank you, Sophie. It's such an honour to hear that. I'm so moved.
Such a liberating way of working. I mean, I could make a project and then I'm back into me and my ideas and my agendas and my this and my that, and I'm doing it now. I'm making a film now, and it's a much more complicated affair. And so it's so beautiful to be given music and your story, but then allowed, because of this resonance we have. I feel a bit uncomfortable about the stuff I was saying about the other, because I don't think I've been discriminated against in many ways. So I don't want to take oxygen.
That's a personal feeling. That's completely legitimate, you know.
So, but I do resonate when you tell me your story of the little girl wanting to win that swimming race. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I've thought, and it's always something I've thought about a lot. I've thought a lot about women's adolescence, as I have about women's, menopause as well. Maybe that's a subject. So these transitional times, and I love ritual, and I think in your work I get a chance to just deal with these ritual, hand washing, candle. I don't know. I feel
it's making me think that possibly ritual is quite interesting to me, but I'd never really thought of it in those terms. But I made that piece for Russell Maliphant after I went to Rome and saw nuns in the Church of Santa Cecilia, and Saint Cecilia is the patron saint of music. But I've seen all these nuns whispering into walls and praying, and I thought about all the stories and experiences of being isolated as a woman somehow and whispering into walls, even if women waiting for men who don't come home, that kind of thing. All these instances of women whispering, but I was very drawn to the sort of ritual aspect of the praying nuns. I don't know, it's interesting.
I just feel I love the way round we're doing it, because I think I work very well with a parameter. I just flow into it and enjoy it and get on with it, whereas generating work all the time that's self-driven, I find harder. I really like collaborating. I live in community. I love rituals, and when you give me a piece of work, I get to use all these different aspects and pull them into a piece of work that I might not, necessarily allow myself. And I think responding to music, it's such and what you allow me to do is respond in my own way with my own imagery. You don't go, oh, what's a sugar lump absorbing tea got to do with, but it does. There's that sort of sucking up of the voice, sucking up of the culture, sucking up of I don't know. I mean, just I'm attributing these things post. I just always thought but yeah, tea comes from the East, not necessarily Pakistan, but anyway. And I just, there are histories in these roots between tea, sugar, water.
That's true.
Yeah, it's part of the story very subtly. And for me, it's always exotic for some reason. When you were swimming holding the camera and the candle, there was for me, you were imagining these tales, and I used to love those tales of Aladdin, and the East always held these mysteries for me. And
I mean, for me, the thing was, as a child, I didn't actually go to Pakistan, so I imagined it. So in a way, there was a story, my father's stories. There was obviously whatever I carried genetically, in a collective memory. But there was also a sort of fairy tale aspect to my understanding of things. So maybe that's where that comes over to you. That gets transmitted, especially if we're talking about that swimming race, because at that time, my connection with Pakistan was physically not real. I didn't go there. So it was, for me, a place of magic and mystery and strength. Also, I drew a lot of strength from that as a child, In fact, the last time I flew to Karachi, not the last time, but the time before, I was there for a month. And I stood at the departure gate, and I suddenly remember being so bullied at school, people calling me a Paki and hitting me and stuff. And I suddenly felt like I had in my hand this jewel that I carried from that time, that I carried inside a pride and a sort of a jewel of this other place, and this that was mine, that was also mine and part of me. And I thought, but I wonder if those people who bullied me and called me a pack, if they could see me now getting on this plane, so happy to be going with another wonderful world to be going to. I just suddenly thought, my God, I actually didn't let go of it. I didn't sort of go, oh, I am awful. And I carried it and I held on to it. And there I was, many, many years later, but sort of getting on the plane to go and stay there for a month and make music. And I was just like, wow, that's something. I managed to hold it, Anyway, we probably talked enough.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, though?
That's very beautiful what you just said. I'm very touched by it, and I think it's tragic the way you have this extraordinary culture in your family, and any form of that kind of attack, that sort of that fear of it, that belittling of it, of this actually very, very precious, beautiful thing, this exciting difference is wonderful. And somehow you allow me to be different to you, but it somehow works together when we work. It's really, really lovely, and it's very open. So
well, thank you.
It's a lovely story.
Yeah, I love working with you too, so I really hope we get to do our film in Sindh, and I really hope that we get to do something really soon again.
That would be good.